All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. It is Tuesday, the 8th day of July. Arlen, hey, how you doing? Before I want to ask how you doing, how was your July 4th weekend?
Oh, it was very nice. They had a very nice picnic in City Hall, Colton Hall, with lots of bands playing in Monterey, downtown Monterey, and they had a parade, the usual things. They used to blast fireworks off in the bay, and they don't do that anymore, unfortunately. But if you look around the rest of the county, you'll see a lot of fireworks going up, but not like the big one they used to have.
Do you know why they stopped doing that? Was some kind of environmental issue, the disturbing animals, pets, something like that?
And I think money had something to do with it too. It's very expensive, and
the fireworks are expensive. You know what? I talked about this a little bit in my program yesterday. I like the fireworks. I agree with you, and it's nice for the public to gather and to do it in a big open space over a river, over the bay, as you mentioned. What I find very, very upsetting is when people do it in residential neighborhoods, like ones where I live, and it's very upsetting to pets and children. And
that's everywhere.
It's not a good idea.
Yeah, people expect that they could blow off fireworks whenever they want on July the 4th, and they do. And the cops probably don't arrest too many people because of it.
Well, in our neighborhood, we had a couple living near us. I think it was a father and son, I believe. When I say a couple, I think it was two adult males. And they were setting fireworks off, and nobody was quite clear where they were coming from. It was very upsetting. This was, on a regular basis, not just on holiday weekends.
Oh.
We found sometimes the debris, the little paper from the rockets would flutter down into our yard, neighbors as well. And ultimately, the house where they were coming from was located, and they were arrested. I saw police actually outside their house arresting them. It was interesting because a lot of the neighbors, there was a lot of talk on our social media, right? We have like a neighborhood listserv, and people were saying, "Oh, some people would complain. I was one of them. Others would say, "Oh, you're overreacting." I don't think so. You're not allowed. It's illegal, and it also is a fire hazard as well.
And it drives the animals, like the dogs, crazy, And then there's always injuries too. People lose fingers and hands and things like that. There are obviously a lot of problems with fireworks, especially done with people who don't know what they're doing.
Let me just say, when some dumbass who's firing off those rockets blows off a finger, I'm honestly not losing a lot of sleep. But could be a child, I gotcha. And again, fire is a risk. There's a lot of other factors. So, Arlen, before we get into some of the topics, and you had some great stories, it was a tough weekend for me. I'm sure for you as well. This big, awful, horrible bill passes. The news is pretty uniformly grim, isn't it? Do you see any sort of silver linings in the dark clouds overhead?
No, I don't think there is. Right now, we're as divided as we ever have been. And, that particular bill is really quite unpopular, that, big, beautiful bill. The majority of people are against it because they can see that, the rich people are the ones that are benefiting. And a lot of people will be losing food stamps and health care and all these kind of things. So it's kind of hard to hide that. But they're trying, of course. But and now you have the thing in Texas, the flooding in Texas, where over 100 people have died. And the problem is they were not warned about what was happening. And we also know that Trump and his people have cut a lot of government workers off of the National Weather Service and other parts of government that are supposed to help people like that and warn people like that. And they're just these services are not available right now because they're cutting so much.
Yeah, it's gutting government. I mean, the whole purpose of government is to protect people, poor, struggling, working people who need protection. And Donald Trump is the kind of person they need protection from, right? The billionaire elites, the ones who are in control, are the ones who have generally been most responsible for taking advantage of others. I'm not saying they're the only, police protect poor people from other poor people, but in general, it's the billionaire class, it's the elites who prey on everyone else to a very significant degree. Maybe not with direct violent crime, murders, robberies, rapes. We do need police to protect from that, but from all these other terrible things that they do, right? And so Trump, a billionaire, is bound and determined to stop the government from being able to protect people.
Exactly.
From him and his cronies. It's awful. I don't really see any, where I think you and I disagree. I'll just throw this out there real quick, but we'll get into more. I just don't see any Democratic hero or any hero really stepping forward who seems to be able to rally people. Well, I say Mamdani, maybe Mamdani. We'll see what happens with him. But on a national stage, there's nobody.
Well, there's nothing that the Democrats really do. They have no power. They can't change laws. They can't nullify what Trump is doing. The Supreme Court is not going to stop Trump. Congress will not stop Trump. So the Democrats really are pretty powerless. And that's unfortunate. I think, they're going to have to, as time goes on, come up with some alternative plans and ideas that people can latch onto. But right now, I think we're all like taken back by all the horrible things that are going on. By the way, something, how we haven't talked about Elon Musk. He's going back and forth, and he's an big friend of Trump, and then he's an enemy, and it's crazy. And now he wants to start a third party, and he's got the money to do it.
Well, that's the problem. Is it's all about having the money, and we need to be able to unite in support of poor Australian working people policies that make life better for the 99%. We have to figure out a way to cut past the money. And that's what, is a democratizing. By the way, don't forget to click like. You've got that little thumbs up there. And, that's the democratizing power of the internet, of media. I think a lot of us looked at this very inexpensive way to reach billions of people and thought, well, maybe we can coalesce behind progressive populists, but that hasn't tragically happened either, unfortunately.
Because I think the money is on the right wing. It's on the Trump side. They're the ones that get the big ratings on their TV shows, the Fox Newses and their copycats. And, they make a lot of money condemning whatever Biden and the Democrats did and saying that Trump has all the answers. And a lot of people believe him. A lot of people don't question a lot of things that they hear, which are obviously false. They're obviously lies. But if they're pushed and pushed and pushed, and it's and repeated everywhere, well, we got a problem.
Well, the Democrats had $1.5 billion. Kamala burned through $1.5 billion in 3 months. She had more than enough money to compete against Trump.
I agree.
I think it's you have to blame the message. You have to blame the messenger. That's why she lost. Trump was, as you point out, not particularly popular. A lot of people don't like Trump. He has made a lot of enemies, and rightly so. But the Democratic Party has just simply failed to present a compelling message to the American public. I'm not seeing that change. I'm not hearing a message today from Democrats that makes me think, oh, okay, great. I really want to vote for a Democrat because they will make my life better. Except for Zoran Mamdani, who has been condemned roundly and attacked by the Democratic establishment. Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Gillibrand, they're all, kind of, well, he might be anti-Semitic, he this, he that. He checked African or Black or African-American on his application to Columbia University, as though it matters what he did when he was 18 years old. So unlike you, I can't put any real faith or any faith in the Democratic Party.
Well, I agree with you. The Democratic Party did a terrible job in the last administration to let the things go at the border. They left a lot of things happening that they thought they could just kind of ignore, and that Trump was going to be far worse, which he was, of course. But, Kamala was thrown into a terrible position. She was a last-minute choice. She was vice president, so she felt she had to, keep close to Biden in a lot of ways. And I don't think she really had a chance to be herself. If she had, mounted a different kind of campaign, she would have done better. But she was given bad advice, and it didn't work.
Well, let me just push back a little bit. We were talking about this, by the way, folks, off air. So we're regurgitating for ourselves some topics that you may not have heard, at least not since the last time Arlen was on. But let me just push back a little bit. I hear what you're saying. I certainly understand your point. There wasn't a aggressive primary fight that she was part of. And if you want to blame Biden for running, or his team, his posse for protecting him from his obvious dementia and, sending a message that he could run and all that, whatever. That's all water under the dam in terms of, or over the dam or under the bridge, whatever. But in terms of Kamala, the argument, well, she just kind of got thrust into it. She didn't know she was going to be running. She didn't really have a lot of time. I'm going to push back in this way. I was a trial lawyer. When you're a trial lawyer, you get lots of things thrown at you all the time. You get curveballs. You get witnesses you can't find. You get testimony that doesn't go the way you think it's going to go. A judge that you think is going to let in testimony says no. You have to be ready for every eventuality. That's what a really good trial lawyer does. Now, I'm not saying I was a great trial lawyer. I was a good trial. I think I was good. I think that was my best skill, actually. There were some things I wasn't as good at. I was a good writer. I was a good trial lawyer. I was not a good negotiator. I always say that. I'm not trying to boast or anything, but I was pretty quick on my feet as a trial lawyer, and I was able to deal with various curveballs that were thrown at me. Kamala Harris was the San Francisco district attorney. She was the top prosecutor in the city of San Francisco. She went from that position to be the attorney general of the state of California. She was a top prosecutor. She was a trial lawyer. She was trained to have to deal with emergencies, quick trials, changes in format of how you question witnesses. That's just disappearing witnesses. That's a witness who turns on you. That's what you have to do to succeed as a lawyer, as a trial lawyer, which she obviously, at least politically, did. Well, she should have been able to handle being thrust into the presidential election. And I don't think these excuses carry water.
Well, actually, she started off pretty well. She contrasted with him, had a much better debate than he did, was more positive and energetic, and people were starting to like that. But when you're dealing with somebody like Trump, who has total control over his party and can say whatever he wants, and he could move and do anything because everybody's just going to follow along with him. Now, Kamala, she was defending the Congress, defending the entire Democratic Party. It's a lot on her shoulders, and she didn't have the clout. She didn't have the strength that somebody like Donald Trump has. Donald Trump has the media in his pocket, and Kamala didn't. She a lot of people were riding on her, hoping she would do something good, but she just didn't know, I guess, what to do, and didn't do the proper thing, and listened to too many people who gave her bad advice.
Are you watching Halitics? Arlen and Hal. I said Carlos. Carlos was in my mind for a second. I'm trying to get Carlos because I want to talk to him about the situation with Mamdani and his application. We'll see if that transpires. Also, we should be getting another guest later this week, Arlen, who I'm really looking forward to, a repeat Jay Waxy, climate activist and Palestinian rights activist, Free Palestine. So, speaking of Palestine, we always, or very usually, start with it. The death toll continues. It's relentless. March up. It's horrific. Every day, nearly 100 or more are killed. Yesterday, a relatively smaller number, only 52 Palestinians killed. 57,600 now is the number approaching. That's definite. And of course, there are many who are not counted. You can see the rubble in every image. Maybe 5% of all Palestinians now, 6-7% have been suffered some wounds, and that's a definite because over 136,000. And I'll just give we don't need to spend a lot of time. With Arlen, I like to have as much time to dialogue with you as possible, but I also feel it's compelling that we put this up. So the count now, according to Anadolu Ajansi, and that's relying on the Palestinian Health Ministry, you have a death count of 57,575. Since Trump took office, over 7,000 Gazans killed, and that includes probably well over 3,500 women and children alone. So yeah, again, just as awful as it can be, Arlen, and Trump has been so bad on this issue. He did push at first for a ceasefire, but he has been so bad. And again, just to get back to Harris and why I really have so little hope, she didn't offer a compelling or even any kind of alternative to Trump's vision. I mean, she didn't she lost a lot of Palestinian American votes because she would not renounce the absolutely horrific policies of the Biden administration. So again, I mean, this isn't even to bash the Democrats, to say this is why I don't see any real hope in a change from Republican to Democrat.
But what about Mondani? He was very partial toward Palestinian position and critical of Israel. But you won't hear anything like any criticism from the Trump administration. They just let Netanyahu do whatever he wants, and they never say anything. They keep giving the money, and he's not effectively doing anything at all to help the people of Gaza. So,
I agree. Trump is awful, and I've said Trump is awful. He's so bad, and yet Kamala couldn't even beat him on that issue. She was no better. But my point with she was equally bad, or almost as bad for what it's worth. I love Mamdani's statements pro-Palestine. I absolutely support Mamdani. I'm going to go up to New York again, and I'm going to canvass for Mamdani. My point, though, is that the Democratic Party establishment, and with very, very few exceptions, seems determined to expel him from the party. They want him to lose. They've done everything they can to defeat him. So, yes, there is this one good Democrat, but he has a target on his back that Democrats are shooting at.
Well, I think you're going to see more people like him throughout the country. I think there's a lot of young Democrats, a lot of Democrats who are really dissatisfied with everything that has gone on so far, and they want something new, something more like what he's espousing. And I think in a lot of places, a lot of blue states, purple states, you'll see more people like him. But it's going to take time. It's very early. The midterms next year are still very far off, and the Democrats are, stuck in a very, very bad position with no power, no clout, and fighting amongst each other, I guess, over what the new Democratic Party should look like. But I think it'll be more like Mondani as time goes on. There'll be others.
Well, you say you need to give them time, but really there isn't time, because every day more Palestinians are killed and the situation just becomes more dire. The climate catastrophe, we'll talk about that in a little bit, continues to worsen. And while it's true that the Democrats are out of power, the best way, in my opinion, in fact, the only way for them to regain power is for them to embrace the issues that they have run away from, whether it's support for Palestine and to abandon Israel, whether it's to take on the climate catastrophe, whether it's to raise taxes on the wealthy. That's how they can excite people. That's how they can win. And by the way, that's how they could throw a scare into Republicans so that they might be willing to, peel away a little bit from Trump. But that's not what we're seeing.
Well, I think that you are seeing some of it. It's just not covered. The mainstream media doesn't, wants to cover everything that Trump does and what he's going to do. And, the Democrats are kind of pushed aside and have, what are they going to do? So they don't have much of a media like the right wing does, the Fox News and all that. They just have, a couple smaller stations, MSNBC, that don't even come close to Fox's ratings. So, it's not going to be easy, but I think, obviously they have to change a lot because, Biden didn't do the trick and the Democrats lost, and they have to do something about that.
So I just wanted to share this very, very quickly. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I saw this on Facebook today. It's actually an X post by a guy named Dan Sheehan. Well, I don't know who he is. Apparently he's Jewish. I was very taken by what he wrote here. I will never forget who has been silent for the last 22 months of the Holocaust in Gaza. Your silence is seared into my consciousness. You would have looked away when my family was gassed at Treblinka too. And I find that very powerful because I really appreciate Sheehan's analogizing the plight of the Gazans today at the bloody hands of the Israeli government and Netanyahu, analogizing that directly to the plight of the Jews in Europe, in Nazi-controlled Europe in the 1940s. I think that's spot on. So that's just my take. I don't know if you have any comment or thought on that, Arlen, but I just really wanted to share that because I saw it and it spoke to me.
There's a lot of people saying the same thing, but the problem is that Netanyahu's getting everything he wants because he's got the military and he's managing to knock off a lot of the people, a lot of his enemies. So as far as militarily, he's as strong as he's ever been, maybe politically too. But
the only one who can stop him is Donald Trump. And Donald J. Trump has not shown any inclination to mess with Netanyahu.
No. It's pretty much established that we are for Israel, and that's all that matters. And it's really unfair because a lot of innocent people are dying and a lot of atrocities are being committed, and we really need to do something about it.
Well, James Carville, I'm not sure what he's doing about it except telling people. It sort of reminds me of the guy in the movie Airplane, if you remember, who's like twirling around and he's all, what is it? Cats and dogs sleeping together. I can't remember. There's all this. I wish I had the clip to play, but this alarmism, remain calm. And Carville, according to Hartman, is panicking about Trump's power grab. This piece obviously spoke to you, Arlen. Why did you decide to share it on the Big Picture Report?
Well, Donald Trump pretty much can do whatever he wants. He's got Congress. He's got a lot of the media. He's got the court system. He's got all the power in the world, and he's not going to give it up easily, as we know. And if he sees that there could be problems in the 2026 election, the midterm election, that he's Carville's making the case that he'll call martial law and not allow the election to happen, and I could see that happening. I mean, who's going to stop Trump? The Supreme Court has pretty much given him carte blanche to do everything he wants to do, anything he wants to do, and there's nobody that's going to stand up to him. And of course, the Justice Department is not going to stand up to him. So I think conceivably that could happen, where he could say, it's an emergency. We have to, stop the election for now and, not allow it until things calm down. I think I could see that happening.
Yeah. And Hartman's point is more along the lines of some kind of court grab, right, where the courts will uphold the striking of millions of voters from the rolls and thereby create an artificial majority of Republican voters. And, I don't think it's totally far-fetched. I think knowing Trump, this is certainly something that's not something it's certainly something he would consider doing. I have to say, I was a little disappointed it's hard to be disappointed in somebody that you have zero expectations of, but I guess I have some expectations of Hartman. And, I just feel like, Arlen, I just have to say this, I just don't think James Carville is a credible figure for Hartman to cite. Now, he may be right on this. I'm not saying he isn't, but I want to play this clip because Carville's message seems to have changed from Inauguration Day. Here's what he had to tell The View.
A lot of Democratic voters and some politicians are feeling powerless right now, and veteran Democratic political strategist James Carville offered his advice on how politicians should handle it. Take a look.
So the question is, how should Democratic politicians respond to this? And what I think they should do is what we call in rural America, play possum. Just let it go. Don't get in the way of it. Or as we like to say, don't just stand there, do nothing. Let this germinate. We don't need to be.
All right. So that advice has really aged like warm milk, I think, Arlen. What do you think? Has he changed, though? Is he saying something different? Because he said back in January, less than, 5 months ago, just let it go, whatever. 6 months ago, it's, Trump will hang himself. Just give him enough rope, and maybe a lot of other people will die and we'll go bankrupt as a result, and billionaires will take over the country completely. But, in the end, people will realize how bad Trump is. Now he seems to have shaded his message.
A lot of Democrats push back on that. They want to get out in the streets and do something. And you can see it with the big protests that we had on June 14th, probably maybe the biggest one-day protest in American history. People want to do something, and they're not going to sit back like Carville is recommending. That's just not going to happen. But now he's bringing up something that could be even worse, and that is Trump not only has ruined our democracy to begin with, and this could be the final nail on the coffin if we don't have the election that we're supposed to have. I can see that possibility. Others can too, that Trump pretty much has power to do whatever he wants to do. And if he thinks he might lose or have problems in 2026, he may just call off the election. And he'll get away with it.
I'm afraid that there's a chance of that. I don't know that he would call it off. I think that, again, the bigger fear, maybe that's what Carville said. I don't know what Carville said on News Nation to Chris Cuomo, but I know what Tom Hartman is saying, and he said it before. This isn't actually brand new for Hartman. He's been spotlighting investigative reporter Greg Palast for quite some time, and Palast is an alarmist. Now, that doesn't mean he's wrong, but he's an alarmist. He makes the case that Trump is going to, and the Republicans are already striking, and there's evidence to support this, right? That they're striking lots and lots of Democrats, and that this is outcome dispositive. This is going to determine elections. It's very scary. I just, again, I don't know what you do with that information. I don't really agree with Hartman's prescription. We'll get to it in a moment, but what's your reaction when you read this? I mean, obviously it's scary, and you're like, oh, Trump can do whatever he wants, and this and that. Yeah. But what's your reaction that people should do, could do, or is there anything people can do in your opinion?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they can. Over these past several months or years rather, as they've been knocking off a lot of possible voters, a lot of people of minorities and people whose identification is not actually, exactly perfect. Here's something, according to this guy in the Brennan Center, over 21 million Americans don't have their documents readily available, so they won't be able to vote. And 69 million women don't have their married name on their birth certificate, so they could be pushed off because of that. So there's a lot of reasons, a lot of issues, a lot of possibilities for the Democrats not to have, as many voters as they should have, and that's been going on for years. The states have the right to do a lot of these things according to the Constitution and according to the Supreme Court. So, that's one issue. And the other issue is if Trump still feels bad, and he says he wants to hold off the election because of violence or protest, declare martial law, he'll probably be able to get away with it.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it couldn't happen. I'm less pessimistic about that possible outcome. I want to say one thing, though, about striking voters from the rolls. It's a fraught thing to do, right? I mean, that's a little risky because if you look at the coalition that Trump put together, it includes a lot of immigrants. It includes a lot of Latinos. It included more black men than we've seen in the past vote for Trump. Now, it's true, we can definitely figure out who, the demographics and districts where people vote overwhelmingly blue and strike them. But I guess my point is that Trump does have a somewhat multi-ethnic, multiracial coalition. So just determining you're not going to let certain people vote based on identity isn't necessarily going to help him. And I guess what I would push back, Arlen, is say what I think Democrats should do is what I've been saying they should do. And I said, this is not new. I said this when Barack Obama was elected in 2008. So we're talking 17 years ago. I said he needs to go to Indiana. He won Indiana. He needs to go to Indiana. He needs to talk to the voters in that red state that he turned blue and talk to them exactly about how he's going to make their lives better, how he's going to bring jobs, better jobs to Indiana, how he's going to protect working people. He's going to guarantee health care for all people there. That's what he needs to do. And he did the exact opposite. He promoted free trade deals. He bailed out the big banks, not the homeowners. And that's why we are where we are, in my opinion. Democrats need to go back to the strategy that I outlined 17 years ago and speak to voters who either did vote for them but are, potentially could backslide, or would like to vote for them if they would just simply champion working people and peace.
Yeah, no, we were in total agreement that the Democratic Party has to get on the side of working people, the side of unions, because Trump took a lot of those votes away from the Democrats, and he really, that shouldn't be the case this time. They should, really push hard on talking about how they believe in the working class and keeping, unions are a big part of that. And I hope they will do that, because if not, then, and by the way, when you talk about minorities, Black people, Hispanics that voted for Trump, that is true, but I don't know if they would necessarily do that in those kind of numbers in 2026. And so the Republicans are still going to be doing this thing of, chopping off people from the voter rolls and making it tough for Democrats to have the number of voters that they should have. They know how to do
agree.
those.
I agree. I was just making a kind of a point on that
Yeah.
the electorate is not as split along race lines as Democrats argue. And so that also supports my argument, which is, hey, go out and talk to people, listen to people, present real solutions to their problems. Don't just kind of slough off any potential vision of the future as well. We're not for Trump. Are you going to vote for Trump? Is that you're going to vote for Republicans? That ain't going to work. We've seen it over and over again fail. The Democrats, and even when it works, it doesn't work for working people. We just get bad policies from Democrats. This is what Hartman says. We need massive voter education on how to confirm your registration and re-register early. All right. Lawsuits and court challenges in every state adopting suppression tactics. That sounds expensive. Federal action, if not from the Justice Department, then from an organized, relentless citizenry and election monitoring from independent and international groups. All right, I'm fine with all that. But here's the thing. If you're going to do that, you have to have people who are motivated, who want to vote for not just against Republicans, but for somebody else. And again, I'm not hearing, and I know you say that it's out there. I heard that Fighting Oligarchy tour, and it went over, I think, like a lead balloon. Nobody even mentions that Fighting Oligarchy tour because there was no vision that was outlined that I heard. Maybe it was there and I missed it, by Bernie and AOC for a better tomorrow.
I think what they proved that there's a lot of people that want to hear what they have to say about making positive changes for the future. And a lot of people who kind of look down on the Democratic leadership, which is too old and too conservative. And I think there's a lot of people that see what AOC and Bernie are promoting is going to help the party, and the party's going to have to move more in that direction, or they'll get swamped again. So I thought they had a lot of people that went to their rallies. So they were very popular. I think a lot of people noticed what was going on, but again, they have no power. So you just got to hope people will remember them and come out in the following election.
Well, let me ask you this, Arlen, because you said a lot of people want to hear what they're promoting. I think that's a direct quote. So what are they promoting?
Well, there's a lot of things that the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is promoting that there'll be some pushback from the establishment, but I think they should be pushing for health care, universal health care for one thing, and work on the gun issue and so many things that they pretty much ignored because there's again a lot of pushback there. But they've got to really make a point of the budget bill, which is just horrendously gave so much money to the rich people who don't need it, and it's taken millions of people off their health care, or will be taken off their health care and their Medicaid and everything else. And of course, the big issue for the Republicans used to be the national debt, and now they don't seem to care about it because they're adding to it. We just have to push on those things and keep repeating those things and hope that, there's a lot of people that think that the Democratic Party needs some younger leadership, different kind of leadership, more progressive leadership. And I'm hoping that they'll, in the end, come out stronger.
Well, I hope you're right. We both hope for the same, Arlen.
Yeah.
You brought this article to my attention. I'm very, very appreciative of that. It certainly is something that I've talked about quite a bit, the climate catastrophe that only continues to worsen, much like the situation in Gaza. Why did this speak to you? And by the way, we had a lot of trouble finding this article. I know it was published in the Santa Cruz Sentinel. Arlen said it was in the Herald. I didn't find the Herald, but I was able finally to find it. And you mentioned the press reader in the LA Times, which is where Eugene Linden actually first published it. So we do have the original there from the LA Times. Voices, heat domes, wildfires, floods, and drought. Where's the outrage? So where is the outrage, Arlen?
Well, there should be more outrage, and maybe, the things going on in Texas might, spur some people to start thinking more and more along those lines that, the climate is getting much, much, much worse. And it's because of what, people are doing and burning fossils and all fossil fuel and all that. And the Trump administration, doesn't mention it at all. They don't seem to care about it. They think it's a hoax, and nothing's going to happen from their side. So, but it's so obvious everywhere that the climate is getting worse, that there's more and more flooding and drought and storms and all those kind of things. And you just can't ignore those things, and they're killing more and more people. So, there should be a lot more emphasis on climate change.
I mean, it's so bad, Arlen. And again, speaking of issues that I've been focused on for, decades, this is another one. And I don't feel like I've made any progress, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, in terms of even people's enlightenment, I mean, we've seen a lot of backsliding. I remember when I was first on in Monterey, and I got a lot of people who were, jazzed to hear at least a discussion about the climate crisis, which is now much worse. I mean, it was bad then. It's worse now. It's gotten worse and worse and worse. And I've had people who were, on board who were like, yeah, this is happening. And then they come back and they don't believe it anymore. And they're like, they watch Jimmy Dore. As much as I respect what Jimmy Dore did to expose the corrupt Democratic Party, he has been a terrible, terrible voice against science when it comes to this tragedy, this cataclysm that we've created. So I don't know what to do, Arlen. I mean, people don't want to believe it. They are desperate not to. The implications of the climate catastrophe are such that it would force changes on people that they don't like. Often from ideological standpoint, it really does require very aggressive government action. It requires people, especially people like, well, I don't want to say you, but people like me and others, to really tighten our belts. We consume far too much energy, and we shouldn't. And the only way to stop it is to raise the cost of fossil fuels to a virtually unaffordable level. And no one wants to hear that. People would much prefer to hear that it's a conspiracy and it's the government is in league with the oil companies. I remember that was one argument I heard. It was so absurd and it was so irrational. But someone made the point. They said to me, "Oh, it's the oil companies that are promoting the climate crisis. They're promoting global warming." I said, dude, they're profiting by causing it. They would never want you to believe, oh, well, they're part of the government. The government's going to take over everything. So when you hear these kind of, and that's not just an isolated person. That's how people see it. They just don't want to acknowledge the reality. Maybe because it's just too hard to believe, just like it's too much to believe that Israel, especially if you're Jewish and you were raised to believe Israel is some sort of great country, you just can't accept the enormity of this crime that we're committing as a species.
Yeah, I think the problem, Hal, is that we live in a capitalist society where profit is everything. Especially short-term profit is more important than long-term realities. So they don't. People do not want to make the sacrifices that are necessary to stop all this horrible climate change, and so they're willing to just kind of close their eyes and pretend it's not happening. But and it will cost a lot of money, and it'll be a lot of effort to make major changes to turn global warming around. But I don't see any great outcry for it. It's just not popular among corporations. They don't want to make those sacrifices. People don't want to make those sacrifices, and Americans are basically like most people. They're short-term thinkers. They don't think about what it's going to be like for the next generation, and they should.
Well, we also don't have leadership. We just don't. We need leadership. No. We need people in power to say, this is happening. Al Gore was one of those, and he was not, I guess once he started talking about the climate crisis, he was not in power, but he could have been a leader at that point, at some points, and he was kind of sidelined. Jimmy Carter talked about this. He was kind of sidelined as well. I don't know what to say. We have a terrible political class. They're corrupt. They're in league with the fossil fuel industry. They have been for 50 years, however long that this has been known to be a dynamic that's creating, we really do live in end times. It's incredibly depressing. And, the only way I think you can get people on board is if you have true leadership that insists that the sacrifices are going to come from the elites, from the billionaire class. They are going to have to give back 95% of their ill-gotten gains. They'll still live much better. If you have $1 billion and you give back 95%, you still have five. Actually, did I do that right? Yeah. If you give back 95% of $1 billion, you'd still have $50 million. You'd still have a heck of a lot more than just about everybody else. So unless we had a leadership class that's truly prepared to take on the billionaire elites who have created this problem, and to say to everyone else, yeah, we're going to consume less. You're not going to be able to drive your car. You're not going to be able to this. We're going to live smaller. We're going to live cleaner lives, but you'll have enough. We're going to make sure everyone has enough. Unless we had a leadership class that could say that convincingly, persuasively, believably, and we don't. Nothing, it's the problem will only continue to worsen until we burn ourselves up completely.
Well, maybe if the problem worsens enough, if you have more incidents like in Texas and the flooding and all these other climate catastrophes, and maybe somebody will come along and say, hey, maybe there's a reason for this happening, and it happens to be climate change, and we have to make some long-term goals and sacrifices in order to change that. But it's not happening. It's not happening now, and will it in the future? I don't know, but it's got to, because the way things are going, our world is just going to fall apart in about a generation or less.
Well, Arlen, do you see any comments from, I don't know, the left, from progressives, from Democrats that suggest that they're prepared to, really make this an issue? Because I haven't heard that.
Well, I'll try to find some for you. I'm sure people are talking about it, but they have no power. They have no influence. And right now, those who have the influence are those who own everything, and those who are, in Trump's world, and just all they care about is, short-term profits and, whatever they can get right now.
Well, Democrats do have some power. They have the bully pulpit power. They have the power to try to rally people. They can have events. So in many states they have power. They actually have a majority of councils, of delegations, of legislative bodies. So they do have some power. They have quite a bit.
I don't think they do. I think they have very little power. And
in California.
Yeah, well, look at what Trump's doing with California. He's at war with California right now. He's trying to make things so much worse here. I was watching yesterday. They showed all these ICE agents with their armored vehicles or whatever going into MacArthur Park, which I've been to many times, and there was nothing there. It was just a park with kids doing summer camp. But Trump is putting all the ICE people in there and trying to pretend that there's some terrible things going on that only he can control. So, he's going after blue states. He's going after California, I think. And, it's pretty sick.
Well, I want to give Trump not Trump. I'm sorry. I want to give a Democrat some credit there. I had a clip of Karen Bass. I think she did stand up to Trump. She did go out there. She did speak against what ICE was doing. As far as I know, they didn't arrest anybody. So that was a case where, yes, somebody stood up to Trump, and I have my issues with Mayor Bass, but in this case, I was really appreciated her leadership, and that was the right thing for her to do. I don't agree that in these blue states, though, that governors and senators and delegates are powerless. They do have power, and sadly, they often use it for bad reasons too. So here's a story. I don't know if you saw this, Arlen. I did share it with you, but you may not have gotten a chance. From the Herald, California approves most significant environmental law rollback in decades. So that's led by Gavin Newsom, Democrat, and I think he has a veto-proof majority of Democrats in both in the legislature. So I can't blame Trump for this. I mean, this is all this abundance agenda. This is, we're going to stop, looking at every single project, and we're going to stop requiring, environmental reports to confirm that there isn't going to be significant damage that results from building this housing, from building a chip factory, for example. If some company decides it wants to build silicon chips in California, we're going to make it a lot easier for them. We're going to cut out all the environmental regulations and rules. And it's a terrible idea. It's the wrong way to go. But it's this whole abundance agenda. We do need more housing. I'm not saying we don't. We do need more housing for the poor, and we should construct chips here if we're going to use them. But this is not the way to go about it, to exempt companies from environmental review. And this is a Democratic state that's doing it.
Yeah, but we know what Gavin Newsom is doing. He's looking ahead to the future, 2028. He would like to be running for president, and he knows that he's going to have to turn a little bit more to the right because it's worked for Donald Trump. So he's trying to push away from his his feel as a overly progressive person, and he's going to try to veer toward the middle, I would think. And right now, that's how he's going to do it, by making,
But Arlen, that argument I think fails when you look at the reality, which is that's what Kamala did, right? She ran hard to the center and she lost. Yeah. Obama actually won in 2008 as a progressive. He was the progressive alternative to Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders came out of nowhere running a super progressive campaign in 2016. And even Trump, you bring up Trump. Trump actually, at least in terms of policies that he promoted when he was running in 2016, they were not hard right at all. He was not a neo-lib. He was critical of the neocon. He was critical of the Trump of the Bushes, for example. So if the idea is Gavin Newsom is too far to the left to get elected, that just seems to fly in the face of reality. If anything, he's too cozy with the corporate elites, like he was when he was at the French Laundry, yucking it up during COVID with healthcare lobbyists.
Yeah, well, I'm not a fan of Gavin Newsom. He's not my candidate, but there's going to have to be somebody at least like him that has progressive ideas and a progressive agenda. He's kind of veering away from that right now because he doesn't want to be overly, pigeonholed about that. But there's a lot of time between now and 2028, and there's going to have to be some Democrats that will, stand up strong for the things that people can, progressive issues that people really care about. I don't know who that person will be, but it's still way too early.
I think it's too bad if it isn't Gavin Newsom, actually, or it won't be Gavin Newsom, but I think it's unfortunate because he does have some real political gifts. He is a glib, he's attractive, he's tall, he's articulate, he has some real political skills. But again, in the end, it boils down to, are you for working people? And He's not. I mean, sadly, he's not. By the way, from music, we've got comments now in YouTube. What's up? I can't help but feel the actions of Mayor Bass were superficial and ultimately meaningless. And so I don't credit her with much. I'm not going to argue with you, music. I think that's fair. She's still, she was there. I give her credit at least for showing up at that park and, being in front of the cameras and bringing people. So, yeah, was it performative? Did it really not make much change? I'll give you that. But it was better than nothing. So,
yeah, and it was,
in my opinion,
by the media. The media, was able to show her saying that and all the bad things that are being done in California. So, in that respect, she did a good job. She got the issues out there, and she's not going to be the one that's going to be running for anything, but it'll be Newsom who might have a chance. But and he said some strong things against Trump, obviously, and what he's doing, what Trump is doing in California. So, I don't know. It's like I say, it's too early to say who really is the strongest right now and who's going to be the candidate that the Democrats need. We don't know yet.
That's an interesting. There just isn't any good candidate. There's no one who stands out, in my opinion, as a Barack Obama. I will say this: in 2006, I believe he delivered was it 2004? Maybe, I can't remember. He delivered a speech either in 2004 in support of John Kerry or maybe 2006. Clinton did the same thing in 1988 for Dukakis, and they were. You could see these guys had the riz. Now, for me, policy is what matters, but they did have the riz. And Obama talked a pretty good game about policy. He talked about the need for healthcare. He talked about, I know you go back and parse his words, and he never committed to anything, and it's true. But he sounded, if you wanted to believe he was going to fight for you, you had plenty of reason to believe it. Maybe, you could parse his language, but he came across as a different kind of Democrat than we had seen. I don't see anyone on the horizon. And if you look at the candidates that have run as Democrats in the last 3 cycles, they've been all just really pathetic, right? I mean, Hillary, Biden, Harris, these are just awful candidates. I mean, I don't see anyone better, Arlen, on the horizon.
Well, I think maybe what we need is a younger Bernie Sanders or an older AOC, somebody that has all the qualities that people want to see in a candidate, all the issues. But again, it's only 2025, Hal. The next presidential election won't be until 2028. There's plenty of time for somebody to come out of the mix and make an impression. But at the moment, we don't have that person.
I'm not seeing him. I'm just not. And I will say, I thought John Kerry was actually a pretty decent candidate. I mean, I really did. I thought he had a good story. He was better than I'm saying he was great. He did lose to W, but he was decent. The last 3 have been awful. And you look at who the New York Times even endorsed in the Democratic primaries last cycle, not the most recent because there was no real primaries, but in the previous cycle, they're both still in office, right? Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren, and they don't excite anybody. And there was a time when I kind of was excited by Elizabeth Warren, but she clearly traded in her progressive cred for, I don't know what she got to stay in the race and torpedo Bernie and say that he had told her a woman couldn't beat Trump or some nonsense like that. So I don't know. I think this party has incredibly serious problems. People always say that. They always say, the party, they lose an election, they lose the midterms, and people are thinking, the parties. This party, their approval is 25% or less. They're hated, Arlen. People really, really, they look so askance at Democrats. They think so little of them.
I think one reason is because Trump, every time Trump does something bad or something that doesn't work, he turns back to Biden and the Democrats and says they're the ones that are responsible. They're the ones. So I think that has a lot to do with it. The way that Trump and his MAGA people have come after the Democrats, who really didn't do as bad as they make them out to be. I mean, there were some good things done during Biden's time until he got senile. But John Kerry was a great candidate, but look what happened to him. He got swift voted. And that's what the Republicans do well. They attack, they lie, they cheat, and he was a victim of it.
Well, I don't disagree with that pretty much. I mean, I was a John Kerry fan at the time. I did support him. I campaigned for him. I think in retrospect, his record looks decent. He certainly was a much better Secretary of State than Clinton was. There's just no question about all of that. So I think, I'm not going to defend Republicans in any way. I think Al Gore should have been president. I think that in that case, I do hold the third party responsible, meaning Nader and his supporters. But that's a long time ago. That's it's 21 years since John Kerry was the Democratic nominee. The party has really, whatever pro-worker, consumer, pro-peace credentials it may have had, it's traded those in. It doesn't have them anymore.
And it's really tough in our system where you only have two parties. You have the Republican Party, which is crazy, or you have the Democrats, and the Democrats have to put a lot of people together a lot of compromises in order to get somebody that people can, actually vote for. And it's we should be having a system like they do in Europe. You have ranked choice voting or multi-parties, things like that, but where you could, people who, third parties just don't make it in this country, as you know. Jill Stein, she had some good issues, but has no clout, no power, and, it's just not going to happen. The Democrats, Republicans are just too strong and too powerful, and, all the rich people in the country are going to go for either one or the other.
Well, I think it's changing. I really do. I'm not quite as pessimistic. I think there's just such an appetite for something different. I think most voters recognize that they're very ill served by both parties, and a true populist, progressive, or populist period could definitely start to erode the control that the parties currently exercise. I actually really do believe that, Arlen. I could be wrong, of course.
Elon Musk does too, because he's talking about a third party and getting a lot of coverage about that.
It wouldn't be a working class party though. So it wouldn't be what I would want. So a lot of people don't know, Arlen, but you do, you have your blog, thebigpicturereport.com, but you're a writer and you often have your work published. So this was in the Monterey Herald. I wanted to center it. Tell us about the easy, and I think it is easy. It's a very accurate title for your letter, Easy Fix for Social Security. You probably didn't write that, but what is your easy fix or the easy fix?
Yeah, well, the people are always complaining about Social Security is running out of money, Medicare is running out of money. What are we going to do? We're going to lose all that. And people are very insecure about those things. But yet, there are actually solutions and issues. And one is to stop the cap on taxes, because rich people don't pay anything above a certain amount of money in taxes for Social Security. And that's a lot of money being lost that could be put back into the system so that, Social Security could keep on going for decades longer. But it's rare that you hear anybody talk about it, so that's why I wanted to at least point out that there are solutions, and, we ought to really think about them, and especially the thing about the cap on earnings and paying taxes beyond a certain amount of money.
Yeah, no, that's the right solution. Absolutely. I think the problem you run into, though, is people will say, well, if I'm making $300,000, but I'm not going to get all of that money back after I retire, then I'm paying into the system. And, I think the answer is, well, that's too bad. I mean, you're making a lot of money. You're doing just fine.
You still have to pay taxes.
But I was interested, I 100% agree with this, that there should be no cap. If a company wants to pay, And by the way, if there was no cap, one thing you would find is that the massive inequality in salaries, lack of a center where there's a tiny number of people with, $1 billion salaries or $1 billion take home, if that would go away, because remember, it's matching. So the 6% contribution into the system, 3% comes from the employee, 3% comes from the employer. So if you want to pay your CEO $50 million because they had a really good year, the stock market, well, you're going to have to pay 3% of that entire $50 million on top of it into Social Security. So that becomes $1.5 million. That's actually a significant amount of money that you're having to match. And then the CEO has to pay that too. So again, there's a penalty if you start paying massive salaries to people, which they're not paying. So I think that's a major plus that would result from this fix. I was also very intrigued to know, because I'm so critical of Democrats. I want to know what they were saying about this. Apparently, there is a Democratic plan that would do what you suggest. Now, I don't know who proposed it. I don't know who was leading the push for it. And this goes to your point that maybe the media isn't covering it. But this is something AOC should be talking about. She should say, hey, they're destroying Social Security. Here's what we will do if you elect us. We will make the system solvent by taking away that exemption for salaries over $175,000, $180,000. People understand that. People would get it. People would realize that she's soaking the rich, and they would like it. So maybe this is a message that the Democrats are trying to get out and aren't able to because of media, but maybe it's also a message they need to push a lot harder than they are.
Well, they have to keep pushing on inequality because it keeps widening. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. And I think Trump's budget bill is a perfect example of it, where all the money was going up, was up. The rich people were getting all the tax breaks, and the poor people are getting cut, in so many ways, their health care and everything else. And, people have to pay attention to that, and hopefully they can see. And I think a lot of people are seeing that it's very, very unfair. And that's why the bill that they passed is unpopular across the nation, even though all the Republicans went along with it. So maybe they'll pay a price in the midterms. We don't know.
All right. So there's the rest of Arlen's letter in the Herald. 100% agree with him, of course. One plan introduced in Congress would eliminate the cap on earnings over $250K and subject investment income to Social Security taxes, which I think makes sense. It's estimated that this would extend the solvency of Social Security for 75 more years so obviously this would be a very popular plan. Most Americans wouldn't pay higher taxes, and those who do would be the ones who can afford them. This is something Democrats need to push. You say Congress would have to get involved. Good luck with that. I assume that's a dig at the Republican Congress, but I do note, Arlen, that even when Obama was president, he floated a proposal to decouple some Social Security payments from the CPI, Consumer Price Index, which would have resulted in lowered payouts over time. So even Democrats, even Obama, have proposed reducing our retirement income.
Yeah, Obama did some, could have done a lot more, but let's face it, he was in a difficult position of being a black man, being president twice, 2 terms as president. So and he realizes that if he went too far, he could, who knows what would happen. People aren't easily ready to accept a black president, and we saw that how much hatred he got after he got out of office. It didn't work as well.
I mean, he's very popular. I understand he's like the most popular politician in America. I may be wrong about that, but I don't think there's a lot of anger and hatred towards Obama. I might be wrong, but I was intrigued when you said that. I think he's very popular.
Yeah, well, that's because he was a fairly moderate person. He didn't do any really extreme things. He got health care passed, which was by the skin of his teeth. But beyond that, he was basically a moderate person, a very kind of a middle of the road Democrat. So, that he knew what his limits were.
All right, Arlen, just looking at this poll, February 11, 25, Obama has the highest favorability rating of living presidents and Biden the lowest. I don't think they're including Trump in that survey. Yeah, Trump is above Biden. Biden right now is viewed least favorably of any president, even lower than Trump, who is not particularly viewed popularly, by the way.
Yeah, but we also know that Biden really wasn't even all there toward the end of his term, and that people really don't like that. They were very upset that no one was saying anything about it.
All right, before we go, Arlen, we are through our hour. Do you have anything? I'm sort of struggling to come up with a good sort of final question for you, but I'm wondering if there's something you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to, a story that maybe we gave too short shrift to, something of that nature.
What's kind of interesting to me is now we're talking again about Epstein, and the Republicans and the MAGA people were very hell-bent on getting all those records and lists of his clients and all that, and all of a sudden now, no, we don't want to, we don't want you to see anything. We have nothing. So you have to wonder what's in there, because there's still a lot of MAGA people are very upset, who really pushed hard to get the list and the things that, Epstein did that maybe would get somebody in trouble.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that story too. And, it's just, we had a lot of other stories to get to, or I actually put this in the deck as well, Arlen. I may discuss it tomorrow. It's really fascinating. What's your speculation? I mean, you think Trump was, you think that he's prominently figures as a client of Epstein? Maybe he was on Pedo Island. He says he never went there. He claims, I believe, that he had never gone down to that pedophile island, whatever. I don't know what the real name of it is, or if it even has a real name. It's just a name that Epstein gave it. But is that what you suspect? Because I certainly wouldn't be surprised. I don't know, but it wouldn't shock me, of course.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you don't believe anything Trump says because he's never told the truth about anything. But yeah, as to what really was going on and who the people who were customers there, we should be able to know that. A lot of people were pushing for that, but all of a sudden it disappears. Pam Bondi says, no, I have that list here at one point. And now yesterday she says, no, we don't have any lists. We have nothing. So it's just suspicious. That's all. And
it's very suspicious. Yeah. It's very hard to believe. I mean, they concluded as well that Epstein committed suicide, which is, again, very, very hard to believe. I mean, he was on suicide watch. They released some video and say, well, no one went to his cell. How did he what did he do? Hang himself? How come he had if they say he hung himself, how did he get the belt or whatever he used? Or took pills? I don't know. Whatever it was. There's never been any explanation for how that happened. The idea that they say, well, he didn't have a client list. Okay, it begs the question. Well, maybe he didn't have like a piece of paper with 500 names on it with stars, 2 stars for really good client, or dollar signs if they tipped or whatever. Maybe that's not what he had. But there were people who flew down to that. We know that there were many people. We know Bill Clinton was down there. Who were the people who went to this island? Why were they there? He was in jail. He was charged with, I guess, prostitution of underage women. At a minimum, his associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, was convicted. So who were the people that they were procuring 17-year-old, 14-year-old girls to have sex with? Who were they procuring them for? It's absurd to say, well, there's no list. Well, maybe there wasn't a list exactly. You're using these lawyerly terms, which list isn't even a list. But who are the clients? Who are the clients then, Bondi?
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. I'm sure there was an investigation. A lot of these questions could be answered, but nobody wants to look at it now. And, maybe it's because Trump had, more influence or more of a friendship with Epstein than he would want to admit. We just don't know. But if they're going to, they're going to take away the evidence, and maybe we'll never know.
Well, here's an argument, or here's a theory I saw floated on Facebook that I actually have to say I find very credible. I'm not saying it's true, but it's very believable to me. This theory is that it doesn't say that Trump was one of the clients. I mean, maybe he was, but that's not the reason that this is being suppressed. According to this theory, the reason it's being suppressed is a lot of names on that list are being basically blackmailed, that they're powerful, influential people, and Trump is using, or the administration is using, the fact that they have this incredible hold over them. People like Bill Gates, for example, maybe Bezos, who knows? These top law firms that are now doing Trump's bidding, maybe a lot of these power brokers are on that list, and they'll do anything to keep from being exposed. So I thought that is actually seems believable. And it goes even beyond that, goes to keeping Bibi out of jail, for example, for war crimes, that we're not going to expose the worst things that these people are doing. We're not going to, we're going to prevent prosecutors and others from going after them, because otherwise we'll reveal their complicity, their guilt in terms of being part of an underage sex ring that operated for probably a decade or so.
It kind of reminds me of Putin and Trump. People were saying early on, why is Trump so fond of Putin? And, some people were saying, well, it's because they have a lot of goods on him. They have a lot of things that he doesn't want them to expose. So that's why he's so close to Putin and Russia. We don't know, because we don't have that information to prove anything. In this case, too, we don't have that information. But it'd be interesting if it did come out.
Well, it doesn't look like it will. But again, this is another area where I think the Democrats actually could use it to their advantage. They could say not just, well, Trump said he was going to divulge the client list. He was going to tell us the clients. Well, not just say, and he lied, he didn't do it, which is true, or maybe there is, I don't know.
We don't know.
But what you could say is, hey, elect us. We will get to the bottom of this. We will do it. Again, fight. In this case, nothing, no report was something. Say, we're going to do what Trump said he wouldn't do. You elect us, we will get to the bottom of the Epstein scandal. But again, Democrats, CNN had an article, a piece saying, well, this is not really a surprise. The New York Attorney General's office concluded, New York City Attorney General concluded there wasn't, or whatever their title is, I think that is a NYC Attorney General, whatever the title is, concluded, DA, we concluded that there wasn't, it was suicide. So if New York concluded it was suicide, it was probably suicide. So CNN is just going along with the conventional, quote, wisdom, if you want. But maybe Democrats should be more bold and say, yeah, we will take on the elites. The thing is, they don't want to take on the elites.
Yeah, well, some of their names might be on the list too. So
of course. Well, yes. Yeah, well, but I was just struck by this comment in the Axios article that reported on the decision that there's not a client list and nothing's going to be reported. There's not going to be any more information. There's not going to be any more indictments. There's going to be zero prosecutions going forward. It's all done. I was really taken by this comment in Axios where conservative figures panned the disclosure, saying it lacked new information. This is not what we asked for. And that was actually previously, that was when Pam Bondi released all these documents and there wasn't anything new in them. And so Representative Luna from Florida, Republican, said, no, get us the information we asked for. Again, this is what the American people want. Someone who's going to stand up to elites, the billionaire class, the Epsteins of this world, the pedophiles, what have you, the warmongers. If Democrats would do that, if they would just do it, then they would find themselves getting elected.
The Democrats have to be a lot stronger. You're right about that. They've been very disappointing the last few years. And, but there's going to have to be, Democrats that will really stand up and be noticed by the media. So And then, like I say, there's still time, so we'll just have to wait and see.
All right, Arlen, great talking to you. Glad you brought up the story involving the Epstein files. That was a good one, and we'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow. Arlen and when are you? What's your plans? You're still? I can see from your background. You're still in Monterey. You have not moved east yet.
I'll be leaving on the 24th of July, which is in 2 weeks. So I'll be here next week for sure.
All right. So we've got Arlen for what Arlen continues. He's obviously a masochist, puts up with me week after week. Not clear what he gets out of it. The checks I had to hold up. No more revenue. So, all right, Arlen, thank you so much. Enjoy your afternoon. It is afternoon now, I guess, in Monterey, as it is here in beautiful, incredibly hot, baking, broiling, climate crisis afflicted Kensington, Maryland. It's cool there, though, right? It's nice in Monterey.
That's why I'm in Monterey and not in Vermont. Yeah, I keep hearing about how hot it is in Vermont, and then it's raining, and then it's cold. It just changes every day.
Very jealous. That'll do it. We'll be back next week. Thanks for watching.